So a very good afternoon to evening, it must be evening, to all of you. And at the outset, my sincere wishes for a happy Diwali, Festival of Lights. And with the coming of this Festival of Lights, let the pandemic be burned away with our with these lights. So after Diwali, I'm sure we'll have a new normal life. So I have to wait for a few minutes. People are joining. So anyway, so with this, today, when today's the topic is on landscape ecology and watershed management. Now, when you see in this Diwali, if you go to terrace of your building, and you will see in the night, and especially from today itself, or from the last 2-3 days, people started to light their houses with different colors. When you're looking those beautiful houses during the night time from your terraces, you'll feel the beauty of those different colors. This is how we have to see the landscape. So today's topic is on landscape ecology and watershed management. It is part of sustainability science block 3 approaches to sustainable development. When we are talking about approaches to sustainable development, why we're talking landscape ecology and watershed management, at the end of this discussion, you will be able to understand yourself why we have to follow, we study, or we're trying to understand this concept of landscape ecology and watershed management as an approach to sustainable development. Today, you must have seen my background with different birds. That must be yesterday or day before yesterday was the birthday of renowned ornithologist Salim Ali. So if you want to understand the function and structure of any of the landscape, understand how the birds are flying from one place to another. That simply tell you the importance of landscape ecology. So with this, let us come to the point. Today, in this topic, we are going to touch upon the basic concept of landscape ecology and how it is related to sustainability. And when we understand, when we have to look the functional approaches to landscape ecology, the functional concept of landscape ecology, and to make it more understandable in a very basic way, we need to understand watershed management. So how watershed management is very much important in bringing sustainable development will also be touched upon. At the end of, as I mentioned at the end of this discussion, you will be able to understand yourself, or even you will be able to explain to the others that how landscape ecology, watershed management, natural resource management are interrelated or interlinkages among each other, and these interlinkages, understanding these interlinkages in terms of, especially in terms of functional point of view, it is the road to sustainability. And in other words, you can say that bringing sustainability needs to understand this concept of or the functional relation of landscape ecology, watershed management, and resource management. So with this, here I put some of the photos of different landscapes, especially in northern India. When you look this different landscape, it may be in this slide, or it may be in your album, or it may be when you are traveling across the country or across the globe. Whenever you see such kind of natural beauty, the first sentence that comes out from you is, wow, what a beautiful scenery. But are we really understand the functional relation of these different landscapes? I'm sure we are not. You only see the virtual beauty, means aesthetic value of those landscapes. And if you look to this different landscape, what I have shown here, then you will see their cultural differentiation among this different landscape. So this is how we have to understand the landscape ecology, and how you have to start to think on how landscape ecology is related to the issues of sustainability at different levels. So first, when we're trying to understand the landscape ecology, we have to understand the basic of landscape ecology, factors affecting changes in landscape ecology, and how landscape ecology is related to natural resource management. So in landscape ecology, in your study material, we have some tags on the principle of landscape ecology, the methods. Then is I have shown in the particular 3-4 landscape when what I have shown in the slide, you need to understand that scale. So concept of scale is very much important to understand landscape ecology. So what are the evolution and the theory of landscape ecology? Oh, I have done some wrong mistake. Okay. Wait a minute. I've done. So, today, a landscape is a heterogeneous area that is often hierarchically structured. When you see in that landscape, you'll find out different hierarchy, from plant, then animal, plant also, different levels, herbs, shrub, plant. Even in that, in other contexts also, you will find out soil and others. So this is a hierarchical structure. It is an open system with matter, energy, resources, organisms that flows across landscape boundaries and in interaction with other landscape, known as landscape function. That's why in the beginning I told you, we do not know, we evaluate what a beautiful scenery, what a beautiful landscape, but we never look, or we never think twice about the function of that landscape, or the processes among different components of those landscapes. So for example, nutrient pollutants, then they flow hydrologic, they comes with the hydrologic flows. If you look, for example, simple examples of how rivers flows from its upper catchment to its destination. So that process through different landscapes. So this shows that the function of landscape is very unique, and it is key to understand the nature resource management. Now, when we look in the landscape, it's about landscape structure and landscape function. What we have seen the structure means what are different component, subcomponent, component, and its function, what we're talking about, the flows of nutrients, the flows of water, flows of nutrients, and the others. They are changed over time, and that's also across space. It, this is the change in the characteristic, structure, and the function over time and space. It may be because of anthropogenic disturbances, or it may be because of natural. For example, in those beautiful landscapes, suddenly landslide comes up in hill area, then suddenly you will find out, you will see differences in landscape structure, even in the function. In the same way, if we stint one construction or one development activities, it changes its functions and structure. So the changes may be variety in different ways. Those changes is variety way, and that has the. I mean, you can see that in different scale. So, so we so in the process of that change in structure of function due to it may be natural anthropogenic disturbances, we will see some of the component or element of landscape may be loose or lost, right? Uh, so depending on the intensity and the frequency of disturbances, or some changes takes place instantly. For example, if you see like an example of landslide, okay, the changes you will see instantly. You have changed the you have seen the changes instantly, while other changes takes place in a gradual manner. For example, ecological cycle, natural cycle of ecological natural cycle. Okay. In that way, we will sometimes we do not know how it was happening, right? So if you look in the principle of landscape ecology proposed by Khuman, so you will find out 12 principles, which can be divided into four major categories: landscape and region. And if you look into the first principle of landscape and the region, you will find out in the landscape, in a particular region, you will find out in a particular geographical area, you will find out different landscape. For example, if you look into the Himalayan area, you will see that the landscape structure, forests and agriculture, and other wasteland. So in that way, paths, corridor, matrix, the details are there in your study material. I will not define much here because we have to look important linkages principle in the later slide. That's why I have a quick look into, let us have a quick look into those terms that then in patches and corridor, the name itself, it's a patches, small patches, large patches, or it's kind of corridors. Large natural vegetation patches, big forests, we'll find out. Okay, a big forest means a large forest area, and sometimes you have in that some vegetation, particular kind of vegetation patches, and different. Come when you talk about the structure in that forest, also you will find out different species, dominating species. It may be pine forest, it may be some patches with pine forest, some patches with other species. Okay, so pet self is also pet self. You will find out different patches. Then in some way, there are interaction among ecosystem. You will find out in a foothill area. Then you will find out that sometimes you will find out river with agricultural activities, then hill. Then in some area you will find out large lake ecosystem surrounded by settlement or some agricultural field. Then meta population dynamics in that particular landscape also you will find out different population of species. Then mosaics. Mosaic is also it's also reflect, the name also reflect the landscape resistance. Small patches. So in this way, you will find out different principles. Okay. If you have any issues in understanding that, and later on you can write to me. So how to study the landscape ecology? When we study the landscape ecology, that means the function, structure and function of landscape, just like other scientific study, it needs a particular approach and tools to collect, analyze, and integrate, as we know that landscape is changing in terms of time and space. So spatial and non-spatial data needs to be collected, analyzed, and it's to be integrated. So when, as you know, in the process, we need to collect the data, and in that collection of data, we need to follow some of the standard sampling and observation sampling methods like sampling and observation. Then sometimes to understand those principles, we need to, develop some experiments. So experimentation is also need to be done. But in this, during the last 20-25 years, a new technologies like GIS remote sensing techniques have become an important essential tool for obtaining large-scale spatial data. Because when you study a large area of landscape, it is not possible to collect a large, big data and large number of information on your structure of the landscape and the function of the landscape. If you look at landscape, you'll find in the beginning age in your study materials already explained there that when a geographer looked at landscape, they will look into landform, but an ecologist, they will look into those different components of landscape, how they connect each other. So from geographical point of view, they look into the structure, and from ecological point of view, the functioning of different component of the landscape. So but if you combine together, landscape ecology is to understand the dynamic relation between the dynamic relation of different component, means structure of this landscape and its function, how it function. So to understand that, as I mentioned in the beginning, we need to understand the concept of scale. So scale, because especially if we were looking to towards understanding sustainability and different issues arising out because of the anthropogenic activities, and sometimes not only that, if you look, for example, from natural point of view, also, for example, suddenly volcanic erupt, and because of that factor, surrounding area will affect, and because of that, then the inter-landscape in the surrounding area will also be changed. So in that way, we need to understand the scale of that landscape, what impact, how much impact that will come. Like if you know, like for example, if we are talking about the pollution, if we are talking about water pollution, air pollution, in that way, we have to understand the scale. So it is very, simple. This scale refers to a cartographic scale, the degree of, that is the degree of spatial reduction, indicating the smaller dimension presenting a larger unit of measure. So this is, that is the representative fraction. That since most of you know about the concept of scale, will not go in detail. No, this in some of the topographic map, you will find out the meaning of this. Let us look into the evolution. And when we realized the importance of landscape ecology, especially from 1980s, then people interpret in different way, and we started to look into how we have to understand. So in that way, then different theory was proposed by different authors. Of that, 4 important theories are hierarchical theory, fractal geometry, percolation theory, self-organized criticality theory. In hierarchy theory, if you know, if we look into that definition, hierarchy is defined as a system of interconnection wherein the higher levels constrain the lower levels to various degrees depending on the time, constraints, or the behavior. So if you look from ecological point of view, this theory states that ecological organizations develop in a hierarchical structure. You will see that, for example, from species and population, in that way we have to go. So the point is that in a landscape, you will see first different population of particular species, then microorganism to microorganism, then organisms, then plant species, then animal species. So that hierarchy exists in landscape. So we need to understand the function of those hierarchy. Then other in that you will find out that, for example, in this third you will find out time against variable associated with characteristic of behavior, because we know that landscape is changing. It's a dynamic process. Landscape is a dynamic process. In that you will see here in the three important characteristics. One is over the time, suddenly you will be able to realize the changes because of that ecosystem function. Whenever you suddenly change in any of the landscape structure, then change in that particular structure, particular component, element of the landscape, in that you will see in the course of time, you will be able to see that easily. And the second scenario, you may not be able to understand the sudden changes, but gradually you will be able to understand. But in the third scenario, no, you will not be the variable, may not the change, because of that variable, the changes may not be able to see in a short period of time. So these three important characteristics needs to be understood, especially in context of that hierarchy theory. So the important concept in the hierarchy theory is the, as it's mentioned, it is also we have seen in these three important these levels. So although the variables that influence the process may or may not change with scale, this may not be changed in scale, but as it is suggested, three important, three hierarchical level can be considered. Then next, this principle is fractal geometry, which identify classes of patterns that remain similar or repeat or by a wide range of scale. You know, some patches will have that forest. In another patches, so you will forest. There are repetition. If the assumption of the fractal theory is satisfied, extrapolation of spatial pattern across scales become possible. Because if you know the trend, okay, after 5 kilometers or after this patches of dominating species is seen, then you will be able to assume very easily, extrapolate very easily in a spatial way. Okay. So an early application of fractal geometry for landscape studies was the use of the fractal dimension as an index of human interference with landscape pattern. Okay, that is exactly what we are doing, because when we follow some development activities or infrastructure development, we follow this kind of fractal geometry principle. So other implication includes the insect movement. Insects also move, measures of landscape texture, species percents of landscape structure, because based on landscape, you will be able to understand how the species are behaving. So that's also one of the example of fractal geometry. Another theory, the third theory, is percolation theory. It deals with the spatial pattern in randomly assembled system. It applies to landscape studies. It has addressed a series of questions dealing with the size, shape, and connectivity of habitats as a function of percentage of a landscape occupied by that habitat type. That's in forests, even in that lake ecosystem also. Oh, that particular plant species. For example, in a forest, if in a lake ecosystem, okay, which kind of floating plants dominated how much percentage of that. So because percolation theory generates pattern absence of specific that do not have specific process, the comparison of the random maps with actual landscape provides a neutral model capable of defining significant departure from randomness of pattern landscape, right? So this theory is offer important insight on nature of connectivity or its inverse fragmentation of landscape. The last one is self-organized criticality. This theory states that open means landscape is open. We have virtual boundary, but if you look into the landscape structure, they do not have a specific boundary, and their system is very complex, right? So because these systems are self-similar, a fundamental understanding of scale-dependent phenomenon can emerge from the studies self-organized critically. And this way we can say that ecosystem own way of remodeling itself. So well-studied example of physical system that display the properties of self-organized critically include avalanches in sand dunes, earthquakes in the ferromagnetic, and canopy gaps in rainforests, river flows, co-evolution in multi-species. These are some of the examples of self-organized criticality, right? So these are basic things. So what are the factors that affect the changes on landscape diversity? As we know that the diverse landscape is, diversity of landscape is very high across the world. What are the changes, factors that affect that changes? Agricultural intensification to have a more production, agricultural abandonment. For example, we have this old practice of zoom cultivation. This also have an impact on the particular this landscape. And case of agricultural intensification, the point is not only your intensification of that particular area. When you follow that agricultural intensification, you change the hydrology, you change the soil, you give flow of this particular input, means pollutant, chemicals that flows that affect to the surrounding component of landscape. So that automatically changes the structure of landscape through that functions, ecosystem function, whatever the input you are giving because of the intensification of agriculture. Next is fire. Fire is also, there are different kind of fire. Of those, natural fire, which is very common in Himalayan area, that's also have an impact on affecting that's one of the factor in landscape diversity change. Deforestation, it is of course very easy to understand. Livestock grazing also, because that directly affect to your structure of that species structure in the grazing area. That is directly related to your soil degradation or soil fertility and others. Then infrastructure development. When we stand one infrastructure development in a particular in any of the area, that direct impact. You don't only use in that case. That's why the reason why we need to understand landscape policy. When you modify some particular landscape, don't see only that structure, landscape structure. You just link with that landscape function, natural landscape function. When you affect any of the component, natural component in that landscape that have a impact to other function, existing function, ecological function. So that automatically, that's why with three phenomenon, three important characteristic of that in that particular graph that shown characteristic was shown that one you can see the immediate change over time, the other is gradually, the others you may not be able to see that changes in 5 years maybe, but you will be able to see another after 15 years. These are some of the characteristics. How landscape ecology and natural resource management is interrelated, very interlinked, because management natural resources is complex due to the interaction among ecological. That's why when we talk about landscape ecology, the ecological function is one of the important characteristics to understand the landscape ecology. So when you talk about management of natural resources, then ecological component is very important, because ecological component has direct interaction with that of your socioeconomic, demographic, political, and other factors. So the main goal of landscape ecology is to understand the causes and ecological consequences of spatial heterogeneity across landscape, right? And find ways and the means for its sustainable, but unavoidable utilization, right? So main goal of landscape ecology is to understand, if you look into that, to manage the natural resources in a sustainable way. So this is how landscape ecology and natural resource management are linked. So here, two of the points we need to understand is why landscape ecology look at the structure, their dynamic relations process, and function in a landscape management for benefit of of human beings. So in natural resource management, towards sustaining these natural resources for societal values. So if you look into it, it is more or less synonymous, means overlap each other. So this is how natural resource management and landscape ecology are mutually beneficial to each other and are closely related. So we need to understand this in a very precise way. We need to understand a different scale, because to tie up landscape structure with multi-scale management, when we talk about natural resource management, last time also Professor Satisha also talked about some of the natural resource management. So in that, when we talk about different scale, we need to understand our scale, multi-scale management. We need to understand landscape structure. And the further slide also, we are also discussing. So to link landscape function with cross-boundary management. When you talk about natural resource management, you will be able to see, for example, water management. Water management, that is, for example, River Ganga. That you have to understand cross-boundary management. So in that, you need to understand the structure and function of landscape. That is here. That is why here we need to understand that principle of landscape ecology. To connect landscape change with adaptive management. Because when we talk about the landscape change, means when natural resource management, when we are talking about if it is changed, for example, 5 years back, you have a different management pattern, but due to your intervention in that management pattern may not be able to, you cannot apply the same management pattern or approaches. So we need to change it. So this kind of adaptive management. So we need to connect that landscape change with adaptive management. So if you look into, as I mentioned, if you look into the landscape, how landscape are, you have seen, wherever you go, you will see that landscape is influenced by cultural identity of cultural norms of that particular region or particular places. So we have to understand the cultural knowledge of the particular region if you want to bring the effective natural resource management. That is why we need to understand the landscape ecology, right? So in that way, we have to, landscape ecology gives a space, and when we talk about natural resource management, from a single scale management to multi-scale management, from static management to adaptive management, from isolated management to integrated management. Because when you talk about natural resource management, we used to manage only that. For example, if you look back in 20, 30 years back, when you talk about resource management, you are talking about some particular resources, for example, agriculture only, agricultural management. But as we know that their ecological function is going on from one component to another component. That's why when you are looking for effective resource management, you have to understand, you have to shift from single scale management to multi-scale management. As I mentioned that from static management, adaptive management, because of intervention or because of change in environment, okay, the way of your management practice may not be possible to effectively implement in the same area which was used to with that particular management practice which used to follow in 5 years back. So because it is a dynamic landscape, is a dynamic process. So we have to adapt it, we have to follow adaptive management. Same way, from isolated management to integrated management, you cannot look only a particular resource, you have to look different component of that landscape. So natural resource management, for effective natural resource management, landscape ecology give such kind of space. Here you will see precisely, you will be able to understand from this particular this diagram. So in landscape, you will find out we have a landscape integrity. What is landscape integrity? It's a landscape structure, landscape function, and landscape change. So when we talk about landscape structure, if you want to maintain the landscape structure, we need such kind of multi-scale management. Then again, if you want to maintain the landscape function, is We know the meaning of landscape function. Those so to make it proper, to make it maintain the landscape function, we have to follow cross boundary management. So bring the integrity of that landscape integrity. We need to have an integrated management. So in that way, when we talk about landscape change, so when landscape is changing, we have to follow the adaptive management. This is how these four aspects of landscape and the four management paradigm are interrelated to each other. So as I mentioned you that when we have an understanding on that landscape ecology and the need to follow such kind of principle of landscape ecology in natural resource management, and another way of understanding this landscape ecology is to understand watershed management. And here we are going to talk about this watershed and its characteristic, and what is watershed management, what are the approaches, which we will have a quick look into that. As you know, watershed is a single unit that covers the area that are naturally drain the rainwater into a stream, river, lake, or wetland. It is a synonym for a catchment or river basin, or the basin of a river. So it is a basin-like landform defined by high points ridge lines, and this into the lower elevation and stream valleys. So this is watershed. The background is watershed. So if you look into the whole supply of fresh water, the intel depends largely on the people capacities to manage flows, right? So land fertility, if you look into food security point of view, land fertility is directly related to your production. That means your food security. And land fertility, for example, the land fertility of Indo-Gangetic plant is directly related to the quality of the particular catchment, upper catchment. So we need to have a good watershed, healthy watershed in the upper catchment to have a good fertility in the lower catchment. So in that way, watershed ecology has a vital role to play in sustainable development. It is not only generate environment, public goods, including irrigation, water flow and quality, nutrient and sediment delivery, but also maintain landscape beauty. See, from watershed ecology, how we are linking to your landscape beauty. So in that we will see this particular function is towards, it is bridged towards, you have to understand from that ecological function. Here we will be able to understand from here how we can look that watershed at different levels. It's services, ecosystem goods and services given by the watershed. In a small scale, in a plot level, it filters the water. If your health of the watershed is good, sediment filtering will be, because there will be less chance of that soil erosion will be there, and less chance of sediment transport is there. And in upper tributary, and if you look in the biogeographical region, that's also sediment transport. Another is a flood protection. And if you have a good this watershed, healthy watershed, you will also give timber, good timber. Then that way, if you look in a global scale, if you have healthy watershed, you will have good carbon sequestration, high biodiversity. This is how a different scale watershed gives or provide ecosystem goods and services at different scale. You can look at the different scale. So then, what is watershed management? It emerges as a new paradigm from planning, development, management of land. Watershed means that if you look into it, is not only about the flow of rivers, the flow of waters. It is talking about land, water, and the biomass resources that taking into account of social, because your settlement social structure is, when we talk about the brief of our landscape ecology, we talk about the culture of that particular area. So institutional biophysical aspect, that adopting participatory bottom-up approach, that is. So when we are trying to have an effective watershed management, we need to understand characteristic of watershed. What are the basic characteristic of watershed? It can be the major characteristic are size. Because if you look into any of the watershed, you will not find all the watersheds are equal in shape and size. They are, different from one place to another because of your landform structure, because of the geographical, places. So you have to look the size for effective implementation of effective approaches and implementation. Self physiography, of course, because based on physiography, we have to understand the scientific methods that engineering structure of our intervention. Then slough, slough is that's what we're talking about. Flow of your, it may be groundwater flow or surface water flow. Then climate is important. Drainage, land use is very important, because as when you talk about different the principle of landscape ecology, we have understanding, we come to know that that land use play an important role in maintaining the functioning of that landscape. Vegetation, what kind of vegetation? It depends on that vegetation, what kind of approach has to be followed. Then geology in the soil play an important role, hydrology, hydrogeology, of course, and finally, socioeconomic condition of the people, right? So when we quick look into that, as I want to bring the size region, is that whenever you are looking for a sustainability of a system, and in particular, especially in sustainable watershed management, you need to understand the size of watershed. That is, and this is how one of the outer academic proposed in 1980, that Bali in 1990 proposed this nomenclature: sub watershed, milli watershed, micro watershed, mini watershed. So depending on the size, sorry, we have to follow some of the specific approach and policy and the program. Then this watershed management is it is a synonymous term of river basin management, which is as well used in Americas, and it's catchment management in Europe. So if you look into the purpose of watershed management, it varies from region to regions, from country to countries, ranges from, if you know, some of the watershed management in the beginnings, 1970s and the 80s in India, in specific, our basic objective was to maintain soil and water conservation and protecting, that's also same in Afghanistan, Pakistan, then in Nepal and Bhutan, to protect reserve, and Sri Lanka enhancing ecosystem services. So if you sum up across the globe, what are the major objectives? It can be summarized. The major objective of watershed management can be summarized that conserving soil and the water is one of the objectives, improving the ability of land to hold water, rainwater harvesting and resourcing, check dam and others, growing greeneries, trees, crops, and grasses, right? Developing so that it can minimize your, landslide and soil degradation. Developing, managing, and sustaining production systems that are well suited to the existing environment resource base, and that can be sustained for future generation. That we have to look from cultural concept. Sustaining or increasing supply of increasing supplies of high quality water, improving the quality of water in stream, lakes, and other water bodies. That's what we're talking about. How the Sukna Lake in Chandigarh was revived. And most of you must have known that first there was watershed conservation program in the upper catchment, preventing excessive soil erosion, rehabilitating watershed land, stream channel, wetland reference system that have become degraded. So these are some of the major objectives of the watershed management followed across the world. And you will find out two major approaches can be looked. One is sectoral approaches, watershed management, who is nowadays we do not, most of the scientists, most of the organizations, they do not follow this sectoral approach. Watershed management, you will see the example that was successfully done in 1970s and 80s only, but later on, from the beginning of 1980s, that integrated watershed management approach was widely followed with community participation across the globe. These are some of the summaries of evolution of modern watershed management. Modern watershed management in South Asia. Here you will find out that uh, the purpose of watershed management, which was evolved from 1970s to till that. So, and the approach, what are the national priorities approaches? No, say here in India, our purpose in 70s was enhancing productivity and reducing yield vulnerability in 10 fat region. In that time, 1970s, but in fact, we do not follow most of the integrated watershed management, but in some of the area, it was fully follow integrated, participated integrated watershed management with a focus on enhancing livelihood in rain-fed region. But if you look into the others, then we do not follow. That was one of the region we do not have much success rate in 70s. So in India, the major objective of watershed management since then is to conserve and strengthen the natural resource base. That is repeatedly we are discussing about, to make natural resource based activities like agriculture more productive, to support rural livelihood, to alleviate poverty. Because your health, social structure is directly related to health of the society, is directly related to your health of the environmental health, means of watershed. So in brief, conservation is strengthening the technology of natural resource use, make resource more productive, and improve the rural livelihood. So ecologically, it will protect the quality of local ecosystem in general. Okay. So if you protect it, then automatically livelihood will be improved. So this is the chronology. This table is the chronology of government watershed development programs guideline in India since 1973 to 70 to 74 to till that. So in the beginning, we used to, as I mentioned you, that our major objective was drought-prone area development program. Under that, promote economic development, mainstreaming of drought-prone areas through soil and moisture conservation measures. Here, you will see the sectoral approach. Then 89-90 onward, we start that integrated wasteland development program. This you can see from then onward, we started integrated approach of watershed management. So in that way, the approach of watershed management was evolved in India. So this is how we are evolving, and we have different, guidelines also, pollution guidelines also, published by ministry. The how watershed management sustainable development, if you look into global effort, you will find out that Agenda 21 is one of the important policy document which was approved by the UNS at the Rio Conference in 1992. So in that, the essential guidelines for sustainable development policy and practice are being provided in Agenda 21. Under Agenda 21, watershed management issue is one of the guidelines. The chapter 13 of the document extensively focus on sustainable mountain development. So means you need to have a sustainable watershed management plan. And that includes promoting integrated watershed development and alternative livelihood opportunity. So when you have integrated watershed development, you have to give livelihood opportunity to that. So in that way, they establishes a framework for linking the development approach of using planning and the management of arable and non-arable land to prevent soil erosion, increase production, maintain the ecological balance. Promotion of alternative income generating activities such as sustainable tourism. In fact, in summarize, you can say that to give alternative livelihood. Because if you feel that that particular watershed is already degraded, then we have to intervene. Some intervention program has to be taken place. Then we have to think about alternative income generating activities of that particular area. So what are the impact? As we know, we are not going in details about the different watershed management program across the world. But if you look, if this is also, we know, on the other hand, we know that different watershed management program policies has been effectively implemented across the world. And it has, some of have good positive impact, some of have we are not successfully implemented. So what are the impacts of watershed management? Which is an example of across South Asia, we'll find out in a review by Reddy et al. In 2017. So when we look into sustainable development, we look four important pillars. One is natural resources, means environmental pillars, economic pillars, social pillars, and other institutional pillars. This is how in different countries, what are the impact of watershed management on that different pillars. For example, let us take an example in India. The impact of watershed management in environment pillars, it improves in the resource base, especially, groundwater increases. It increased moisture availability, reduction soil erosion. That means improving the health of that, ecological health of that watershed. If we look into the economic pillar, positive benefit cost ratios, means increase in net income and employment. If you look into social institutional strengthening of participatory institution, improve gender participation. It is, clearly visible in most of that watershed management plan, especially after 90s and after 80s, late 80s and beginning of 90s. And if you look into terms of overall livelihood impact, good impact on nature, financing, social capital. That's why when you talk about sustainability, if you have a good environment, automatically you will have a better livelihood option. Okay. The house watershed management is linked with sustainable development goals, 17 goals. If you look into the first goal on end poverty in its everywhere. So the major objective is to end poverty. If you are giving livelihood, automatically watershed management, if you are giving livelihood to watershed management, then you will be able to end the poverty. So it is very important. Then 2 is also important. Ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all added. It is highly relevant, right? So in that way, how these are related, you will find out from this table. It is a publication by Reddy et al. In 2016. So how watershed management is related to SDGs means the relevant to your watershed management and SDGs goals, right? So we have to understand, we realize that when we're talking about watershed management, you have to scale up that, and we have to understand from landscape ecology perspective and how to maintain the sustainability. So a new area evolved in the process of sustainability science. That's to look into or to study towards the direction of landscape sustainability. So that's called landscape sustainability science. So here, let us have a quick look into sustainability landscape interaction and how landscape sustainability science started. What are its theoretical foundation of analysis and application of landscape sustainability science? When we talk about sustainability, we are talking about human needs that should be in harmonious with nature. Then the question comes is, what are human needs? What are these needs? Because if we look into the human needs across, we have repeatedly discussed when we talk about basic human needs in the last different sessions. Because our needs are different, because our socioeconomic status is different, cultural tradition is different, and individual lifestyle and preferences are different. And on the other hand, we have learned that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you look into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we're talking about, love, affection, peace, and whatever, that was on individual level. So that's why different authors like Herman Daly, a famous ecological economist, developed a framework as commonly known as Daly triangle, and which was further refined by Meadows in 1998. See, why they are proposing the thing, purporting as Daly's triangle? The reason is human well-being has both objective and subjective dimension. Both these subjective and objective dimensions are essential. So we have to consider not only the material and economic needs of the people, but also their spiritual needs, wants and aspiration, their dignity and equity. You will be able to link very easily, because we have already talked in the last few sessions about when we are talking about different dimension of sustainable development. So all these key concepts and ideas of sustainability need to be integrated in a comprehensive and cohesive framework. So the point is that when you talk about the human needs, now you are not supposed to talk only the individual needs. We have to broaden. We have to look from the broader perspective also. So here you will find out what Mandelbrot proposed in 1973. It's in his book Towards Steady State Economy. You will find out three important hierarchy. Ultimate means, intermediate means, ultimate ends. Ultimate means natural environment means. Then you have to achieve the ultimate ends, means equity in human well-being. Okay, what we we go through economy, technology, politics, and ethics. So when these middles, still relates natural well to ultimate human purpose. Here you will find out in that intermediate means subcategorized into two hierarchy. Because when we have natural capital, that is biodiversity, ecosystem, process, natural resources, ultimate means, because ultimate we have to have the health, good natural capital that can be built by human capital, what labor, tools, factories, process, raw materials. When we have, that is why when we're talking about that, we are talking only this dimension. That's why we have destruction. So then we need another human social capital. It is not about your labor. It is not about factories. You have to think about your human social capital, health, wealth, leisure, mobility, knowledge, communication, consumer goods. So at the end, we'll be able to achieve our good well-being. That is happiness, harmony, identity, fulfillment, esteem, self-realization, community, transcendence, enlightenment. That is we talk about in this Meadows hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So the ultimate goal of sustainability, as you know, is to improve and maintain human being. This goal cannot be achieved without simultaneously protecting the life support system that is natural environment. So it must mean that preservation of the services that we derive from the ecosystem. Thus, landscape ecology plays an important role. And landscape sustainability science emerges, and it is a place-based use-inspired science that aims to understand and improve dynamic relationship between ecosystem service and human well-being. So if you look in the theoretical foundation of LSS, here now you'll be able to understand what are the principles of landscape ecology. One is sustainability science is the theoretical foundation. Next is landscape ecology. Resilience theory is very important than hierarchy theory. So in landscape sustainability science, it embraces major key concepts in sustainability science that highlight the fundamental role of spatial heterogeneity. It is because of the heterogeneity the world is complex, and because of this complex, we are able to survive, right? Alludes that landscape is arguably optimal scale to understand the dynamic relationship between society and nature. Because of the heterogeneity, automatically comes into relation of different society, different community. Then because of heterogeneity and characteristic of that spatial pattern, then you see there is a relation between society and nature, and achieve the sustainability ecosystem services and human well-being. Then it stresses the importance of close scale interaction. It is not talking about only one scale, cross scale, and feedbacks for the resilience of landscape to environmental change. Resilience, nature's own recreation, underline the need of adaptive management, what we had talked about, governance and intervention to improve the reciprocal human-environment relationship across scales. In landscape ecology, you know, we have all the defined there in the, it is the study of interaction between spatial pattern, means what we know that spatial pattern is what geographer is looking, and ecological process, what ecologist is looking. So landscape sustainability science builds upon the concept, theories, and approaches from landscape ecology, but it shifts from traditionally more ecological focus to the dynamics of social ecological system. This is very important because in the beginning, what we started understanding landscape ecology is the pattern, your pattern, spatial pattern, and its ecological process. Here, when we talk about landscape sustainability science, here we have to look from not only from the point of focus to the dynamic of social ecological system. So LSS focuses on understanding how ecological consequences of spatial heterogeneity, that is your species, community, ecosystem function, cascade to affect human well-being and vice versa, as well as the impact of social change to natural system, change of natural system to the social changes, social system. So that needs to be understood. Then resilient theories, this is also one of the important, which was originally defined in ecology as the capacity of a system to absorb external stressors or disturbances without changing its fundamental structure and function or shifting to a qualitatively different state. And that resilience theory is basically after Rio. We have discussed that most of the global effort, most of scientific understanding comes up after Rio. When we are looking from sustainable development point of view, when we're looking about sustainability of an issue. So landscape resilience highlight the critical importance of spatial heterogeneity and spatial interaction among complex adaptive systems for overall resilience of system to external drivers of change of disturbances. So I will not go here. In case of, no, that is what we talk about when we're talking about this watershed management. Also, we have looked into how different goals of SDGs are related to watershed management. Same way, in case of landscape sustainability, it is normative, has specific sustainable outcomes. Like, for example, in SDGs, that seeks to address the major challenges facing human society while ensuring human well-being that is undiminished and the art system undegraded. So hence, key to achieve landscape sustainability is the building and fostering desirable resilience of landscape through landscape design, planning, and management that tolerate disturbance or adapt to change in ways that continue to provide ecosystem services and support human well-being. In hierarchy theory, from here you will be able to understand very easily, landscape are mosaic of landscape elements. Landscapes are mosaics of landscape elements in which people live and work, and through which the processes from local to regional and global scales are biophysically, socially, and economically linked. From this perspective, landscape sustainability science well suited and place-based research for achieving sustainability, because sustainability should start from the one of the approaches from the bottom-up approach. So we start from the local level, depending upon the issues. That's why whatever we are talking about sustainability, that depends on scale. So such emphasis on interaction feedbacks between landscape level changes and their hierarchical linkages to both finer and broader scales are rooted in the hierarchy theory and a fundamental lens to take in studying LSS. Thus, hierarchy theory and the cross-scale interaction are central to landscape sustainability science. What is the application of landscape sustainability science? Like that's I don't think so. I need more explanation on that. If we want to achieve sustainable development goals, we have to understand landscape sustainability science principle and principal landscape ecology first. Then how that concept of landscape ecology is grown, evolved towards landscape sustainability science. We have to understand, right? So application is you can apply your mind that it can apply, especially if you look into the SDGs, we can apply that concept, principle, and approach of landscape sustainability science in achieving sustainable development goals by 2030. In that, some of the examples, land sparing and land sharing, for example, land sparing, which is a land zoning strategy to specially decouple food production and environment conservation, has been commonly adopted by national government. These are land sparing, that you have to leave some of the land for one particular specific purpose. In that way, land sharing, so that in land sharing practice, what you can do, that for example, here you will see crop yield can be improved with mitigated anthropogenic input and enhanced ecosystem service, because we have to share. I mean, if you look from that particular point of agroecological landscape, you can look into different variety of species can be grown. So these are some of the example of application of landscape ecology. So one of the, to understand this concept, for example, land restoration, what we are talking about, okay, to achieve good health and well-being, to achieve this, if you find out some of the degraded land, how it link with your good health and well-being, let us look into. When you restore a particular land, particular area landscape, you will find that because of that, your erosion will be controlled, creation of diverse ecosystem landscape will happen, wetland conservation, river channel restoration, urban planning. This give into your recovery of ecosystem functioning service provision, means giving food, good water quality, air quality, then climate regulation, pest, pathogen regulation, enhanced crop pollination, buffering storms damages. So in that if you have that good ecosystem functioning and service provision, there is a less chance of infectious disease and pest. And if you have greater supply of food and clean air and water, automatically it will give you benefit to individual human health. That means increase, if you have benefit to that you will have an increase in food and water security, clean air, protection from natural disaster, reduction of disease caused by pest and pathogen, then benefits of pharmaceutical, because if you have, that good ecosystem functioning, the provision, and then increase physical and psychological well-being. That's why when we see the beautiful landscape, we say, wow, what a beautiful landscape it is. This is the meaning of your psychological well-being. So if you look into SDGs, if you look into different SDGs goals, no, you can look into from the lens of landscape ecology. Okay, this is how you have to look. Then to achieve those landscape ecology, we have to coordinate each other, different ministries, and so that's also you can look and from the lens of landscape ecology. Because when you talk about landscape ecology, improving the landscape, each and every department has to, means this shows that we need integrated approach of landscape ecology. So with this, I would like to wind up the session. Let me take only one photos for the